again, everyone, and welcome back to Reddit Aliens. I'm John. Thank you again so much for being here. Good topic today. Let's do it. What is the creepiest real-life experience that happened to you or that you've heard about? Please remember to like, share, and subscribe. 2 weeks ago, I woke up at 5 a.m. for work, and every cabinet in my kitchen was open. And I have a shitload of cabinets. We're talking at least 20 doors. The alarm was still set, doors all locked. Talk about feeling violated. I still have no idea who or what did it. It's not the first time something like this has happened either. Every so often some creepy, unexplainable shit will happen. The last time it was a door leading from the laundry room into the garage. Middle of the night, it opened and the alarm went off. I jump up, run into the living room, shut off the alarm, close the door, lock it. I walk the house, checking all the rooms. Wife and kids, all except my oldest son, are asleep. He's like, "What's up?" I ask him if he opened the door and he's like, "No, I thought you did." Satisfied that I just left it unlocked and maybe pressure or something opened it, I go into the living room, sit on the couch, and immediately the alarm goes off again. I rush to the laundry room. Door is wide effing open. No one's there. I was sitting in the living room with a direct view of the laundry room door that connects to the kitchen. Anyone in the house would have to walk past me to get there, but nada. No one was there, and after the first time, I made damn sure that door was locked. It creeps me out like you wouldn't believe. I woke up in the middle of the night and needed to use the bathroom. Got up, went and did my business, then got back in bed but was having trouble falling asleep. That's about when it started. It was the eeriest sobbing or howling sound I've ever heard, and I couldn't decide if it was a human or an animal. It sounded like it was coming from over behind the canals 2 streets away, and I couldn't fall back asleep till it had long stopped, and made sure my window was locked. The next morning I told my mom, and she got this look on her face like she knew what I was talking about, and brought up a YouTube video of a Bigfoot cry. It was the exact same kind of cry I'd heard the night before. It gives me chills now thinking about it. We live just on the edge of a suburban area, and beyond that there's nothing but fields for hundreds of miles. It wasn't a coyote or a cougar or anything else that lives around here. I listened to their sounds on YouTube because the thought of Bigfoot creeped me out, but nothing came close to the recording my mom had found. I used to live in Fall River, Massachusetts. I lived in this apartment complex that was once an old Catholic orphanage, then turned school, then turned into apartments. This complex was terrible. It was poorly kept by the owners. The other tenants let their dogs pee in the halls, there would be occasional violence, and the police or EMTs were there quite literally every night. Now, I had friends in the past who were also somewhat sensitive to what people would call ghosts or energies. I had a friend from college visit, and her alarm bells had immediately gone off. She could sense an energy on the 3rd floor, which was coincidentally where I resided. I lived with my roommate and 2 cats. Oftentimes, I would catch my cat seemingly watching things walking around or doing who knows what. I have reason to believe one of my cats often got played with. He seemed to enjoy it. What's more, my friend had informed me that she felt there was a spirit named Sarah in the apartment. She was a young girl, timid, but she thought I was funny. I frequently talked to myself as a way to sort the process of my emotions or the day. Apparently, Sarah found this funny. There were 3 specific instances that come to mind. The first was when I'd lived there for about a year. I worked as a therapeutic mentor, community-based, and would have to go to clients' homes to meet up with them for their appointments. I normally set alarms to wake me up if I decided to take a nap, which I did on this particular day. It was around 5 in the evening, and I was in danger of sleeping through the appointment unknowingly. I was dead asleep, but was woken up by 2 extremely distinct, heavy slaps to my pillow. At this point, I lived alone, and nobody else was around to do something like that. Thud, thud. It was very jarring, though I had little time to really figure out what had happened, as I realized I was going to be late. Sometime later, perhaps months down the line, I'm struggling with one of my more challenging days of depression. There were days wherein I would not leave my bed, and would alternate between crying endlessly for hours and feeling nothing. This was a monthly occurrence, and on this particular occasion, I could feel somebody rubbing my back so as to comfort me. Although I was startled by this, I was not in a mindset that had me afraid. I simply accepted it. Then my roommate moves in. I had reason to believe whoever was faffing around the apartment stayed in that extra bedroom. My roommate would tell me that they often felt they were being watched and that they felt uncomfortable. They had left for work one day and had texted me about a shark in a jar they had. They wanted me to take a picture so they could show somebody. I opened their bedroom door, and for half a second, I saw whoever Sarah was. She was taller than me, had been standing there, and no joke, we both startled each other. We both jumped in surprise, but she disappeared, whereas I remained. That was genuinely the last time I encountered her. Before I moved out, I told her, if she was still around, that I appreciated her presence and that I apologized for possibly scaring her. I now live in a house that I own, but I don't get any particular feelings like that. I have other stories, but this post is already too long. I had experienced cat ghosts and some extremely negative energy, I guess, in college that was seemingly attached to my best friend and me. Okay, ghosts, paranormal, all that stuff. But are we not going to talk about the fact that you had a roommate with a shark in a jar and then asked you to take a picture of it? Once I almost drowned in my own bed. I had what was obviously a dream. I knew it was a dream, but eventually I drove my car off the road and into a lake. At first, the door refused to open. Eventually, I smashed a window and got out after the water had overtaken the entire car for a little while, but no matter how much I swam toward the surface, it just got darker and darker, like I was sinking. Eventually, I let go of the last piece of air I had in my lungs, gasping for any air in the water that I could acquire. Of course, water being water didn't exactly yield any oxygen, so I got desperate for more, but yet again, no breathable air was extracted from the water, no matter how desperately I inhaled it. Eventually, the darkness that embraced me turned from the darkness of the deep to the darkness of nothing. Yet still my body was desperately trying to acquire any air. Eventually, I relaxed my whole body when I realized there was no use and woke up. My bed was drenched in sweat, to the point it was literally dripping onto the floor. That was when I realized what people meant when they sweat buckets. In addition to that, my head was pounding from a lack of oxygen. My heart was beating like crazy to try and recover, and I was so out of breath, I felt like I had run a marathon. It took me hours to recover to an okay level, and it took days to recover properly. This is really long, but this is a 100% true story. 25 years ago, I moved in with my cousin and her roommate coworker Jose. The house was an old cement block 3-bedroom, 1-bath house with a large fenced yard. He had 2 very large German shepherds that lived there and were mostly in the yard. The house is in Claremelle, Florida, in a shitty, packed suburban neighborhood. Nothing special. Rent was cheap, $50 a week, wow, from what I remember, and the house was clean. Plus my cousin lived there too, so I moved in. We all got along well. Everyone worked, we pretty much kept to ourselves and saw each other for a few minutes here and there. I lived there for about 6 months. This is the story of what caused me to move out. On a weekend night, we all happened to be off of work. We decided to invite some friends over from the pool hall that we frequented, and Jose invited some people over that they worked with at the pharmaceutical lab. There were probably 20 people there total. We played music and did what young people do. Eventually, it got pretty late, and we found ourselves talking about ghosts. We all shared stories. My cousin and I come from a pretty spooky family, so we had some good ones, and everybody was really into the discussion. Jose was quiet throughout most of the conversation. He waited until we all kind of quieted down and then said, "This house is haunted." My cousin and I shot each other a look and then both laughed because, yeah, sometimes Jose's 20-pound house cat would meow at the empty hallway, but that was it. He proceeded to tell us that there was a presence in the house, but that it mostly stayed in the shed in the backyard, this tiny little pink wooden shed that I had never even looked in. He told us that he always keeps the curtains in his bedroom closed because his windows face the shed, and the door to the shed will not stay shut. He's jammed it shut a million times, and it always pops back open. It creeps him out. He said he could tell when it was in the house because he would wake up feeling depressed. It creeped me out. I don't want to think that I lived in the presence, and I didn't like the idea that it was hurting my roommate. I was a tough chick, in my opinion, and I was like, "F that ghost. I'll shut that door, and you won't have to keep your curtains closed anymore." I said all this because in my heart, I didn't really believe that anything was in the shed of the house. I believed that we were effing around. So I told them all that I was going outside to inspect the shed and deal with the door. Everyone followed me, and while we're walking around the outside of the house, Jose told me that it was a bad idea to mess with the shed, that whatever it was wanted that door open, and I should just leave it alone. We all got out there, and it was exactly what I thought it was going to be. A very worn down wooden shed that oddly kinda looked like a tiny house more than a shed. I looked inside and there was a busted lawnmower and sold old paint buckets, some rusty screens, and darkness. I looked around outside and found some rusty-ass shovels in a corner of the garage area. I took a shovel over to the shed. I kicked the door of the shed back into the frame. The door was closed and literally kicked into the frame, kicked shut. I took the handle of the shovel and put it under the handle of the shed door. I shoved that into the ground. It was secure. We all went back inside. We bullshitted some more, but it was late. I'm gonna say maybe 1 a.m. by the time we go back in, and everyone kind of said their goodbyes. We let the dogs out of their pen in the yard and locked the gate. We made sure the front gate was secured so they wouldn't get out, and then we straightened up the house a little and eventually all went to bed. Sometimes around 6 a.m., I woke up because I needed to pee. I opened my bedroom door and I was sleepy still, but there was a weird sound as I opened the door. It startled me, like fingernails scraping something coarse. I opened the door all the way and the shovel fell in the door and hit me. I can't even put into words how I felt in that moment. The shovel had been standing against my bedroom door. There was a tiny pile of dirt where the tip had been set against the tile floor of the hallway. I rushed through the house to the side door, which was locked, and then out to the backyard. The shed door was wide open. I felt like I couldn't breathe. I ran back into the house. I immediately pounded on both Jose and my cousin's bedroom doors. I was terrified and angry. I absolutely knew that one of them had done this. I know that you, dear reader, couldn't be there to see the reactions, but I promise you, neither of them did it. Jose literally started to weep. He begged me to tell him I was lying. He begged my cousin to admit that she had done it. When neither of us would take responsibility, he went to the store and got a bunch of religious candles, produced a rosary, and started trying to pray whatever it was away, or pray for me for being so stupid. My Spanish wasn't even close to fluent enough to keep up with his prayers. My cousin, on the other hand, was pissed. She was ready to fight me. She was adamant that I was pulling a prank. She cussed me up and down. She called me a liar and said I was a child. That most of all, she didn't appreciate being woken up at 6 a.m. after a night of partying to be a pawn in my prank. When I knew that neither of them had put the shovel against the door or reopened the shed, I was literally terrified. There was no way someone else got into the yard, past the dogs, got the shed door open, and then got into the locked house to put the shovel against my door. I didn't sleep there again without someone else in the room with me. Every moment spent there after that was beyond tense. We all kind of stopped talking to each other, and Jose and my cousin ended up in a terrible argument over a button on the stereo, and she moved out within a week. It took me 2 weeks to find another place to live. I never went back. TLDR. I locked a ghost in a shed with a shovel. The ghost came into the house, put shovel against my door. I moved out. Alright, skeptics and true believers alike, what do we think happened here? Was it one of the roommates? Or perhaps the original poster playing an elongated prank? Or the dogs? Or the shed ghost? One time during the night, I was around 8 or 9 years old, and during that time, me and my sister slept in bunk beds, and I got the top bunk because it was my turn. One night when I was sleeping, I was suddenly woken up, but for no reason. When I got up from my bed, shivers went down my spine as I saw a very slim shadow figure in front of my room door, which was wide open. The shadow was looking in the opposite direction of me and into my big sister's room door very deeply. As a note, the shadow figure was still as a rock, didn't move a muscle, until it turned its head slowly in my direction, and that's when I hid in my sheets. The shadow stared directly at me, with its head turned towards me. Pretty sure it made eye contact, but I couldn't tell, but still didn't move a muscle. At the time, I wanted to scream, but stayed silent because I thought it could kill me even if I made a fraction of a sound. What felt like 10 minutes go by, and I take a peek, and the shadow was not only looking at me this time, but instead its whole body was turned my way, standing there, without a single twitch of a muscle, and I couldn't even see its face, which was the scary part. My heart pounding fast and adrenaline high as a guy on weed. In a silent panic, I pretended to turn around while sleeping because everyone has done it, so I could fool the shadow. Then, with my heart pounding at my chest, I look up at my Injustice Gods Among Us poster, a fighting video game, and prayed for Superman to come save me, but I eventually went back to sleep. And then I woke up in the morning, and of course, the shadow was no longer there. It still scares me to this day, until I found out the truth. It was my sister who slept at the bottom bunk. She had told me that she went to go get some water, but while walking, the floor made a loud creaking noise, and she stood there still in fear that she woke me, my big sister, or my mom, up. She was too scared to move. A nice story. I once watched a known pervert following a young girl around town. It was busy, so I guess nothing was going to happen. I was waiting for a friend as I saw her walking down a very quiet street in the town, stores closed down, and she stopped to use her phone, and I saw her entering the alley, so I reacted knowing that he might take a chance to do something bad. I didn't really think about consequences, so I approached her and said hi, then hugged her, but I quickly whispered, "Go with it," and I made a couple of eye movements in the pervert's direction and suggested we get a coffee, basically moving her away from the alley. I told her about him and apologized for maybe coming off a little pervy too, but I had different intentions. She was stunned but grateful, yet he still prowls the town for young women. I was having weird hallucinations for a while, I guess smoking a lot of pot and lack of sleep, stress at work, and who knows what else, but I would wake up and see things. Many times it was bugs crawling all over the nightstand, and I'd jump up in bed and smack them till mid-smacking I'd see them disappear, and I'd be embarrassed to myself for smacking imaginary bugs. Another time I woke up and hallucinated a hurt puppy skimping over across the bedroom floor and ran into my walk-in closet. So I got up and chased it into the closet and got on the floor looking for it, then realizing, what the F am I doing? The scariest was when I woke up and saw black ooze pouring and dripping out of the ceiling at the foot of the bed. I panicked and jumped out of bed and ran to the washroom to grab a few towels to try and clean up the mess, and as I was soaking it up, it disappeared. After that, I called the doctor and told him I was hallucinating and needed to have a checkup. They told me to come in immediately and did some basic brain scan or something, answered some questions, asked if schizophrenia ran in the family, if I was on hard drugs, told them about smoking weed, but that was it. Diagnosis? My dreams are so lucid that they bleed into my reality when awake. Not sleepwalking, not asleep at all, but my brain apparently just doesn't know when to stop imagining shit apparently. Luckily, I'm not stressed at work anymore and stopped smoking, so no recent ones, but holy F. While reading this, my first thought was schizophrenia or schizoaffective disorder, but they said lucid dreaming being really real? I don't know, never heard of that before, but I hope it's better for you. I had an uncle who built a house in the middle of a mountain. He owned the land and used the place as his getaway. Used to go with him or other relatives until I wasn't allowed to go anymore. I wasn't told why until I was 17, when my uncle told me one night he woke up and saw someone by the window. It was a woman who only looked at me. When my uncle tried to get her attention, she'd just move a bit and stare at me. He went outside to confront her, but she wasn't there. Uncle thought he was going crazy, until one of my relatives woke him up one night and told him the ghost lady is back. Apparently they've noticed the lady too, and realized it only ever looked at me. I went to that place a few times, and every time I felt like I was being watched, and the place just felt so isolated. Had a couple of troublemaker friends right around the end of high school or early college. They always had a frisbee, and they were always getting into weird stuff. So, one day, the group of them, like 3 or 4, decided they were going to run around in the woods behind a Walmart while playing frisbee. Everything's great, and they're just goofing off well after dark. They walk a bit further to a hill or bluff overlooking a pond surrounded by more woods, only they realize that they aren't alone. Down in the water, above waist deep, is a group of people in robes surrounding the reflection of the moon, just standing there. I think the guys said there was chanting, but I honestly don't remember. The guys just stood and watched, gobsmacked. Then, all the people in the water slowly turned to look up at them. The guys booked it out of there, out of the woods, out of the Walmart parking lot, out.